This Tisha B'Av, we can ask, or we ask every year perhaps, Ma nishtana? Halayla Zeh, what's different this Tisha B'Av? What's different? What's changed? Every year, unfortunately, we get together and we speak about Tisha B'Av and how we have to reflect on the Churban Beit HaMikdash. This year it's very obvious that we've been coming through a very difficult and unusual period of the coronavirus and everything that's gone along with it. In America, there's been social unrest. Ma nishtana, what is the Kadosh Baruch Hu saying to us? I'd just like to share with you a thought. To start off with, it's as follows. In my neighborhood, we recently had a seger. A seger is when they lock down the neighborhood. You're familiar with that concept? They locked down the neighborhood. And when they locked down my neighborhood, there's army police, army and the police were guarding and blocking traffic. And they're checking everybody who's going in and going out. And you have to explain yourself, who you are and what you're doing. In my neighborhood, Eretz Israel. And they have roadblocks, an army. And I have to explain, who am I? What are you doing? Why do you want to go out? Why do you want to come in? This is in Eretz Israel. A seger. And it dawned on me that this was a ka'ain. It's similar in a slight way to feeling what it was like to be in a real ghetto. Rahman al-Islam, 80 years ago, 75 years ago, our brethren were in real ghettos. And it wasn't just a question of a health crisis. It was a question of enemies, starvation, and ultimately the worst. That was what happened in those ghettos in Europe. And I felt, it's a ka'ain, what it's like to be in a ghetto. But it's obviously not the same thing. But I had army telling me where to go, what to do. I have to avoid the roadblock. And let's think, what else has been happening? Besides for the seger, how many people's parnasa have been uprooted, jostled, ruined through this whole process, through these last couple of months? Since World War I, from World War I to World War II, was a tremendous upheaval for the world, and it was upheaval for the Jewish people. And many people lost their parnasa, and many people had to move. And yeshivas were disrupted. In those days, yeshivas had to be closed and had to run away. What are we now experiencing with shuls having to close and yeshivas being disrupted and learning not being normal? This is ka'ain. It's a ka'ain of what people went through in the past. But it's not the same. It's not quite the same. We're not being pursued by somebody with a gun. But we're having ka'ain. And someone pointed out to me, when we go into the sukkah, so we say to Kodesh Baruch, we say, this should count like my gullus. I might be chayav gullus. Let me go into the sukkah is a gullus. Being in a sukkah could be a nice thing. We love the sukkah, but it's like gullus. We're going through something for us in this generation. This is our form of gullus, our form of experiencing ghetto, our form of experiencing parnasa disruption, our form of watching what it is for yeshivas not to be able to learn the way they meant to. It's our experience. It may not be with the knife, but we're going through it ourselves. And I was thinking, I once heard from my Rebbe, one of my Rebbes, Reb Mordechai Yisbi, that just passed away. Since World War II was a time of tremendous midas hadin. Since that time, we've been experiencing tremendous rachamim. It's been a good time for the Jewish people. In general, we've prospered in America. We have people returning to Eretz Israel. It's been a positive tekufa for the Jewish people. We've seen rachamim. But now we're in this period of a disruption of our lives, of confusion. I think of the words of Rav Wolbe. Rav Wolbe once got up in the Mir Shuv and he said as follows. Years ago, there was a trial of Ivan de Manuk. For those of you who are not familiar, he was tried because they thought he was Ivan the Terrible. And he was tried. First he was convicted, then the ruling was overruled. But at the time, every radio, wherever you walked in the streets of Eretz Israel, you heard this trial. And they were chazering, and they were going over what happened in Treblinka. So Rav Wolbe Zitzal got up in the Mir Yeshiva. He says, I'm not concerned. It's not my concern. It's not our concern whether he's guilty, whether he's not guilty. We're not getting into the issues. But why is it that Kadosh Baruch Hu is making us hear day in and day out about Treblinka? What is the Kadosh Baruch Hu saying to us? So I quote from him. He said, it's midas adin masucha. There's a midas adin that Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to remember that there's still a midas adin lying over your head. We have to remember, we have to relive those tragedies. Now we are going through our disruption. And it's a huge disruption for many people. There's been a lot of suffering. And it's a different way than a proper war. Midas adin masucha. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, don't think the game is over. It's not fully over. This Tisha B'Av, when we sit on the floor, we have to reflect on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to us now in the last few months. Let us remember, you might say to me, Rabbi, the whole world has experienced this. This is not miyuchad for the Jewish people. But World War I and World War II, well, World War II certainly was part directed at the Jewish people, but the disruption of World War I was a disruption for the entire world. And World War II, although part of it was directed at us, it was a disruption for the entire world. But beyond that, Breishis bar Elokim es Shamayim v'Saaretz, Bishvil Reichis, everything that happens in the world is for Jewish people. Rabbi Avraham Rockmill goes to point out that even anything that's brought on the world is coming for the Jews. This is a message for us to hear. He says by the depression, the Great Depression in the 30s, why was it there's such a depression? He says the money's sitting in the banks. Why aren't people lending it to one another? Terry says they don't trust one another. He says mida keneged mida. Because people had lost their emunah in the Rabbanu Shalom, so they lost their emunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made them lose their emunah in one another, and they weren't prepared to lend money. It's all a message for us. So it's true we're part of a global pandemic, and a lot of suffering going on all over the world. But as Yidden, we have to appreciate HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to us. He wants us to say, what's this for us? Now, you've been thinking about this. This is nothing new. We've been going through this now a couple of months. But I want to say, in terms of Tisha B'Av, let's think for a moment. One thing that's come out of this is that we've been stripped from all the distractions. All the distractions in our lives have been stripped away. Can't go to normal vacations, can't go to normal eateries, can't go out the same way. Restrictions. And our lives have become, in many ways, more simple. We're getting back down to basics. Basics means with the family, with the core mishpacha. It's a time that we've gotten more to reflect on who we are. I want to point out to you something. Chazal tell us as follows. When we read Megillas Eicha, but the first time the word Eicha appears in the Torah is Ayeka. By Adam Arishon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Ayeka, which is the letters of Eicha. Rav Avo Paysach leMegillas Eicha, v'heimu ka'adam avru bris, and they, like Adam, they went over the bris. Mahu ka'adam, Paysach, who's going to go over a bris if it's not a man? Ka'adam Arishon, Klal Yisrael are like Adam Arishon. Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu Adam Arishon hiknasti v'gan Eden. I put him in Gan Eden. But Siv, I commanded him. V'avad Tzivuyev, and he was over on my commands. V'gerashtiv, I made him leave. V'shalachtiv, and I sent him away. V'konanti, and then I mourned on him. And I said, Eicha, Diksiv Yomalai, Ayeka, Eicha Ksiv, Af Banav, even his children, meaning Klal Yisrael, Hiknastim L'Eretz Yisrael. I put them in Eretz Yisrael. Tzivisim, I commanded them. Va'arvu al tzivuye, they went over my tzivuye. V'girashtim, I made them leave. Shnema mi beisi agar shem v'shalachtim. Shnema shalach mi'al panai v'yetzau. V'konanti aleihem eicha. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Ayeka, which is Eicha, to Adam Arishon. He put him in the garden and gave him, said him before, Shem Kol Tuv Sela. He had everything, it was good. It was great there. Hashem gave him the greatest chesed. But the one command that he had, he didn't keep. And he made him leave. So too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Eretz Yisrael. He gave us bracha v'atzlacha. He gave us a place where we could have Hashras Shechina and physical and prosperity along with spiritual prosperity. And we sinned. He made us leave. The same thing. It's interesting. The word Ayeka means, where are you? And the Meforshim point out, if you look at the Chumash, Ayeka was said to Adam when he approached them after he had eaten from the Eitz Hadas. He said Ayeka, and then Adam said, he had a conversation and he said, you ate from the eights. Then the Kodesh Baruch Hu said, and then he punished them and then he sent them out. He didn't say it at the end. And likewise, Meforshim say that Eicha was written even before. It was given to Yokneam before the Gullus. There's two elements here. The Meforshim say that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is a work, was ma'abel, Kodesh Baruch Shoma Yemei Evlo Kodem Shevias Yemei Ma'abel. It says in Yerushalmi, Kodesh Baruch Hu was an oval on the world before the Ma'abel. V'parech v'keep mis'ablim ala meis Kodem Shiamus. Can a person, can you have a veilus on somebody before they die? Umashani Adam. Any Adea Matayamos. The person doesn't know when they're going to die. You can't misabel on him. Achiamus. A Kodesh Baruch Hu Adea Matayamus. So he knows when people are going to die. Misabel Techila. So therefore, Adam Arishon, a Kodesh Baruch Hu was able to say, one of the Meforshim say, I was able to say Ayeka or Eicha on him before he sinned, before he gave him the Gezar Din. But I'd like to point out it's as follows. A Kodesh Baruch Hu knows. He knows that we have a weakness. So he comes to us, and the resounding words, Ayeka, where are you? Not where is all the distraction. Where is the homeo shorome, all the noise of Rome that's been stopped. All the noise. All of a sudden it's quiet. A friend of mine, somebody went to the airport and Ben Gurion. I don't know what's going on over in America. Quiet. Everybody can park outside. There's like 5 people there. There's nothing going on. Home, all that noise, all that activity, all that rush. Quiet. So you know what? Then you have to look at yourself. These whole couple of months we've been forced to look at ourselves. And on Tisha B'Av b'miyuchad, Ayeka. We all know. What does it say? Alma Avda Aretz. Why was the land destroyed? Why would we lose Eretz Yisrael? Shalom Baruch Torah Techila. They didn't make a blessing on Torah Techila. That's a very strange thing. Because they make a blessing, says the Bach, famous Bach, since they didn't make a bracha on Torah Techila, Torah was not choshev enough in their eyes. They weren't learning it to lishma. The Torah didn't rest in them. They weren't like a heichal. They themselves were not a repository for the divine. So the divine left them because they weren't learning Torah properly. Since the divine left them, he left their hearts. The issue is not only Beit HaMikdash. The issue is not only Eretz Yisrael. The issue is us. The Rambam says that when we sit down on Tisha B'Av, when we're on the floor, it's like you can mace a mutter lefanav, like one's mace in front of him. Well, you can learn the mace is like the Beit HaMikdash. But the mace mutter lefanav is that part of us which has lost touch with our real reality. Ayeka, where are you? The first question that Kodesh Baruch Hu says, where are you? He knows that unfortunately we might sin. Where are you? Where have you gone? Where have you strayed? And then there's an Eicha, which comes afterwards. Afterwards, as the Kodesh Baruch Hu has to send us away, he pines and he says, Eicha, where are they? Eicha, how can this happen? There's 2 elements. There's before and there's after. There's before he has to bring the Gezar Din. He wants us to do tshuva. This Tisha B'Av, when we've gone through a whole national and really a worldwide experience for those who have any kind of ears to hear and eyes to see, the way we've been stripped of all the nonsense. It's not available. It's not available. You have to stay at home. You have to stay in your Dalet Amos. You can't go where you want to go. You can't eat where you want to eat. Everything's restricted. You can't talk to who you want to talk to. You can't even be with your own family. Be careful. So who you got to be with? Yourself. When you're with yourself, this Tisha B'Av, you have to say, where am I? Where have I been? Why didn't the Beit HaMikdash get rebuilt? It says every generation that the Beit HaMikdash is not rebuilt, it's as if we would destroyed it. Well, it's not them. It's right here. And since we've gone through this unusual period in world history, I think, well, not world history, it's certainly in our lifetimes, of a magefa, of experiencing what it is, how a Kodesh Baruch Hu can make the world go topsy-turvy. And we've all now had the chance to introspect on what we really want from life. Do we want to just rush back to the norm? The world's rushing to get to the norm. We want to go back to the norm. Well, you know what? We all want to live normally. But what does norm mean? Does norm mean going back to all the distractions? Does norm mean forgetting the fear? Does norm mean forgetting that our looking at ourselves and wondering who we really are? Tisha B'Av, you're not allowed to think that way. On Tisha B'Av, you know what the halach is? You can't leave shul until chatzos. Lichatchil. You're supposed to say the kinos until chatzos. And by the way, the whole din of the 9 days is reduce yourself doing from business, etc., and simcha, she shouldn't be Mashiach das. There's a halacha not to be Mashiach das. Tisha B'Av, Hashem says, look at it straight in the eye. Look at it. No, I want to look. No, look at it. No, look at it. Look at it. Look at it. You have to face it. You have to sit on the floor. You have to sit there. Don't go outside. Don't go outside. Don't look and try to make your mind off it. Face it. And when you face it, you face yourself. This Tisha B'Av, I bench us all. We should be zeicher to face ourselves. We've gotten, as it were, an assist. We've been forced now to face ourselves. But let's translate that into facing ourselves as Yidden, facing us what we really want from life, facing us that there's a Rabbanu Shalom who's shown his malchus on the world. Let's face us, let's makabel al malchus shemayim. Let us face that we want to be that better Jew, that God willing we will be part of the solution in bringing by God's Hashem soon, Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mhera v'yameinu. Amen. Chazak u'baruch.